The autonomic nervous system controls all the organs in our body and is involved in the control of several bodily functions such as heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, metabolism, and more. In this video, I'm going to provide a very general overview of the structure or the anatomy of the autonomic nervous system. I will discuss 3 key points that will provide you with most of the information you need to know about how the autonomic nervous system is structured. Before we talk about how the autonomic nervous system is structured, I think it's important to recognize where the autonomic nervous system sits within the nervous system hierarchy. Of course, we have a central nervous system, or CNS, which consists of the brain, brainstem, and spinal cord. We also have a peripheral nervous system, which is all our nervous tissue that projects out from the CNS or into the CNS, aka our peripheral motor and sensory nerves. The neurons that make up motor nerves projecting away from the CNS are called efferent neurons with an E, and the neurons that comprise sensory nerves projecting into the CNS are called afferent neurons with an A. Our somatic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system, and this comprises alpha motor neurons that innervate skeletal muscles, which allows our brain to voluntarily control how we move about and interact with our environment. It also contains sensory neurons that come back into the CNS from joints, muscles, and skin, and other sensory organs involved in special senses. Another part of the peripheral nervous system is the autonomic nervous system, which we will talk about in this video today. The autonomic nervous system also has efferent neurons, but instead of innervating skeletal muscles, efferent neurons within the autonomic nervous system innervate the many internal organs that control several aspects of our physiology. Therefore, this part of our nervous system is deemed autonomic because the innervation of our internal organs is involuntary and can't be voluntarily controlled by our brain like what we see with the motor neurons that innervate skeletal muscles. The autonomic nervous system also contains sensory neurons that project into the CNS from our internal organs, which are involved in visceral reflexes. Now, the autonomic nervous system can be further subdivided into sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. The sympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system is commonly called our fight or flight system, and the parasympathetic part is called our rest or digest system. I will not talk about the physiology of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems in this video, but I'll talk about their differences in structure. So, what are the 3 key points that we need to think about when considering the anatomy of the autonomic nervous system? Number 1, sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves originate from different parts of the CNS. Here we have the brain, brainstem, and the different levels of the spinal cord, aka this is our central nervous system. Sympathetic nerves, which are drawn here in pink, originate in the spinal cord only. Specifically, sympathetic nerves originate in the thoracic and lumbar spinal cord. In contrast, parasympathetic nerves, which are drawn in light blue, originate from both the brainstem as well as the spinal cord. Brainstem parasympathetic neurons are part of cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10, and also originate from sacral levels of the spinal cord. Number 2, unlike motor nerves in the somatic nervous system that contain neurons with axons that extend all the way from the spinal cord to the muscle, both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves contain 2 neurons arranged in series, aka for autonomic signals to travel from the nervous system to effector organs, they must travel through 2 neurons. This means that autonomic nerves contain what we call ganglia. Ganglia are essentially groupings of neuronal cell bodies in the peripheral nervous system. For both the sympathetic and parasympathetic parts of the autonomic nervous system, the first neuron in our 2-neuron chain is called the pre-ganglionic neuron because it is located before the ganglion. Preganglionic neurons start in the CNS, where their cell bodies are located, and synapse within autonomic ganglia. The second neuron in our 2-neuron chain is called the post-ganglionic neuron. It starts in the ganglia, where its cell body is located, and receives synaptic input from preganglionic neurons. Post-ganglionic neurons innervate our internal organs. They are essentially the connection between our brain and our body. And lastly, key point number 3. The length of pre- and post-ganglionic neurons differ for sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. For sympathetic nerves, they comprise short preganglionic neurons and long post-ganglionic neurons. So, sympathetic ganglia are very close to the spine, where they sit in parallel to the spine, aka in the paravertebral ganglia, sometimes known as the sympathetic chain ganglia, and also a bit further away from the spine in the prevertebral ganglia. For parasympathetic nerves, they comprise long preganglionic neurons and short postganglionic neurons. In contrast to sympathetic ganglia that are close to the spinal cord, parasympathetic ganglia are very close to or sometimes sit within their target effector organ. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you now have a better understanding about how the autonomic nervous system is structured and have learned a little bit more about its anatomy.